my thoughts on Donald Trump on the Joe Rogan podcast. So I'm a big Joe Rogan fan. I'm not as big a fan of Donald Trump. I've heard Patrick Bet-David mention to him, you have to have Donald Trump. Imagine what that would do for you. And I don't think Rogan was interested from that perspective at that point, like to make it big or anything. But I'm glad it finally happened for whatever reason. Well, he did mention that once he got shot, once he had that assassination attempt, he thought the timing was good and he thought he should be on the podcast. Whatever the reason is, it was a very fascinating idea to me because their personalities are so different, and I like how Joe Rogan can keep things very conversational. He's very cordial and open-minded to a lot of the things that his guests come on and say. So I'm Sal with Omniversal, helping you learn through other people's experiences and lifestyles. Learn to accept other ideas without having to change your mind. Easy changes as little as 1% every day can have great benefits in the future. Your 1% now may be more valuable 1% later because you've grown and learned much more. So as long as you keep adding that 1%, it can compound and have a lot of benefits. If you stick around till the end, I'll give you a tip on how I decode politics in a sense. And this podcast was a good example on how to do that. So, first things is I like how he was able to stay a little more personal with him. It wasn't just all about the politics or the policies or anything. They did talk about it a little bit, but that's what I was curious to know about Trump. Like, how can Rogan get him to just speak as a person? What is he like in a conversation? If there's like a family gathering, just something where there's not that he didn't benefit from this, but very just conversational. So one of the ones he mentions, they're both big boxing and fighting aficionados, so they're both very into it, and so I enjoyed seeing them talk about it. I have no idea what they were talking about, but I enjoyed them enjoying themselves about the topic. They talked a little bit about golf. We all know that Trump's a golfer and has that hobby, and people were all pissed off about him the first term, how much time he was spending golfing. It was nice to know that kind of they had hobbies and other interests outside of what they actually do. I would love to learn what the other candidates have as hobbies. I think Harris has mentioned that she likes cooking, but I would love to hear her talk about just, I guess, her knowledge and expertise and what she's learned through cooking, some of her favorite dishes, just something more, I guess, personable. If she messed up a meal, the best meal she's ever made, something like that. The story about the pilots, the first time they were heading to the Middle East, was very fascinating to me too, because it was a very human fear to see from him, even though he knows he's at a very important person in the world and he's supposed to be protected. He just kind of had that slight fear that, like, oh my God, like, are these guys really doing what they say they're doing? It was just it was a cool story. If you're not aware of it, he's pretty much talking about the pilots on Air Force One, told them to turn off all the lights, so even the plane didn't have the blinking lights, and he was talking to them up front, and so all you see is pitch black around, and they're going to land the plane, and they still don't see anything. It's still just in the middle of the Middle East, pitch black. There's no runway lights or anything, and the altitude's decreasing 1,000 feet, 900 feet, and so on and so on. And eventually they land, and they're at the destination as expected. All right, moving on is, I forgot which podcast I heard too, but somebody described Trump as like a 13-year-old bully, and I feel like ever since then I can't unhear it, and it's been so useful in interpreting how he acts and what he says. And I a lot of times I don't think it's as hatred filled as it comes out to be, but it's just kind of maybe a hurt bully talking smack about somebody that's either defying him or in his way, or I don't know, he's used to getting his way for certain things, or he thinks he's being mistreated, as sometimes bullies are, sometimes because of their reputation, and so on and so on. The other thing is, I've noticed through trying to learn about marketing is he talks in marketing and salesman terms. He talks about the best and the worst, and I've started noticing this a lot in like products we see. This is the best cream for this, or this is the best cleaning solution for this, and we don't even second guess it. We just accept it, and we didn't go back to the store and like, this says this is the best, and it really wasn't that great. And so a lot of his things are taken out of context in that sense, but I think that's just the way he talks. This is the best, this is the worst. He doesn't literally mean this is the best and the worst. He had the best economy. I think he means they had a good economy and better than what it was before, or better than some of the previous people, but I don't think he actually means it was the best. It was interesting also in Trump terms, as a politician, almost admitting to some mistakes. He said his first term, he had to appoint so many people. He said as many as 10,000, but he appoints like the first 100, and then they appoint other people from there, and then those people appoint others, but it pretty much trickles down to appointing about 10,000 people. And he admits he a lot of times didn't know what to do, and some people came to him like, hey, I think you should appoint this person and this person, and so he kind of took their word for it, and it turned out to be bigger mistakes. And that was fascinating to me too, because now I think one of the biggest things I have issues with now is, or even before, is that how are people allowed to go for or apply for one of the biggest positions without kind of working your way up? I think you needed experience, and he didn't have that experience, but this time he does have a full term under him, so now he does have experience, and I think that showed that he understood that he made mistakes. Now he knows what he's expected to do, and even with the people he's mentioned, and to me, I'll talk about it in a little bit, but I think RFK was a big translator for me in this. He kind of translated what Trump means, or how he speaks, and what it means when he speaks. Again, understandably, he calls out some flaws in energy initiatives from Democrats, like solar panels and windmills. For example, he mentions about how you can't produce solar panels without coal. And that was very fascinating to me. And I even kind of fact-checked it and Googled it. And it's true. You need coal to make solar panels. So it seems a little, I don't know, like counterintuitive when Democrats do talk about going green and so, but we still need coal. But yet we still don't want to talk about coal, or at least won't admit to it. So that all seems, it seems a little hypocritical in that sense. Windmill waste. I talk about the windmill graveyards. I don't know if they exist, but it did make me question about what does happen when these windmills go out there. It just seems like it is just a huge piece of plastic. I don't know what the material is, but that does seem like a huge waste to have to put it somewhere where essentially once it doesn't work. All right, I'll move on to how I thought Joe Rogan handled the situation. Like I mentioned, I like how Joe Rogan keeps everything very conversational. It's very natural, it's very relaxed, and I think that's how he gets people to just not necessarily spill their guts. It's not like they're doing anything crazy, but it does get them more relaxed and gets them to talk a little more and a little more in detail, and a little more things that they normally wouldn't say just anywhere. So I enjoyed that, and I like how objective he is and open-minded. As crazy as sometimes some theories may be, whenever people are on his podcast, he asks them to elaborate, and as they elaborate, he kind of understands where they're coming from and gives them, and he'll challenge it too, and sometimes they agree or don't agree, but it stays cordial. They don't get at each other's throats. They're not yelling at each other or anything. Nobody's ever walked out on it or anything like that. So that's what I like about Joe Rogan's podcast. I wish he would have called him out on certain things, or at least have him clarify as to what he means when he says certain things the way he says it. So, and even one like where he's talking about having Kamala Harris on also, and he just started saying like, oh, like this, she would be, I forgot how he says it, but just she'd be boring and she's very low IQ and she'd just be here down on the floor and falling asleep or I don't know what, but it was like I wish he would. I think he could have called him out in the Joe Rogan way where he doesn't get defensive. It's like come on, man, do you really believe that? Like she's not like they're not gonna. She hasn't gone anywhere like that, and just so again, that's I think part of the thing that's just the marketing thing, and to help you picture how terrible of an idea this is because that's the way it's going to turn out, and so it's exaggerated, but I wish he would have called him out just to see what his own translation of himself would be. So as far as undecided voters, I wanted to vote for RFK, and as he pulled out of the battleground states, I didn't think Texas was going to be one, but apparently it is, so he's not on the ballot here, so I'm a little disappointed about that. I've told myself I don't want to enable the system anymore as far as the two parties, so I wanted to go third party. I will likely still go third party, but as far as any other undecided voters, I do think we got to see a little more of a human side to him. It wasn't just talking politics, talking policy, and so that was pleasant to hear. Like I said, RFK became like my Trump translator, and he kind of translated things the RFK way. I really liked the way RFK would break down things, and he wanted to get to roots of problems. And I like with their new the Unity Party thing that they talked about is that they can agree where they agree, but they were still at liberty to disagree publicly on certain things. And even on this podcast, Trump mentioned disagreeing on some of environmental things that RFK is for and he's against, and so on. So I do think they do have those liberties to disagree with each other. Also through RFK, I learned how much the media does manipulate things, and I saw it be through RFK because I became a fan of RFK early on, probably about I followed him for about a year, and so I saw a lot of his videos and saw him, and I felt like I got to know what he's like as at least the politician, and how what he stands for and how he wants to fight the system for it. And as the election got closer, you start seeing headlines of the things and how they make them sound, and knowing that much more background from following him, I see the headlines and I was like, that's completely taken out of context. And then as he's kind of forced to drop out, or at least not allowed to do the debate and so on, others have come out saying how hard it was for them as third parties to pretty much come out on top. And so it was like the media keeping them down. And this goes back as far as, was it Ross Perot back in the 90s? It sounded very similar to what was happening to RFK. So that starts shedding some light on how the media is manipulating things. So that's also what kind of got me on the Trump translator thing, is that maybe Trump was painted in a different way than what he actually is. And to me, it actually came out after his assassination attempt. You can tell, or at least to me, it appeared that he was more calm and a little more personable, especially like on the Theo Von podcast one. Also, that was another one that he seemed very human-like and talked as a father and so on and so on. And so it wasn't as much policy. He was just talking to Theophon and even like drugs and stuff, and how he's like, that was so shocking to him. And it was different. It was different from anything I had seen from him. So that being said, I think a lot of us gave him crap, and even the media gave him crap because he would spend so much time believing everything he saw on Fox News. And now the flip side is, now I feel like we all were tricked into believing what the left-wing media says. And so sometimes the politicians themselves say some of the things that the media is saying. And so like you're falling into the same trap after getting on his case for essentially just watching Fox News the whole day and regurgitating the information they said on there. So that's been very fascinating to me as a realization. He disagreed with the media his first term, and after like having all these realizations, it's understandable as if you put yourself in his shoes. And Rogan mentions one of the first things he mentions is his appearance on The View, and how everyone loved him, and he almost seemed the same way. He seemed very calm and collected, and like I think he obviously does better around people he likes. He's a little more calm and can give you better answers, and that's kind of the way I saw him this time around. And if this is the way he is, like when the bully is at peace and he's able to just be himself, I can see how he would get upset with the media when it was that drastic of a difference, when they're trying to make him look a certain way that he felt was taken out of context. Okay, so that being said, is he forgiven for the past things he's done? I wouldn't go that far either. I think there's still a lot of the name calling he does that as a grown adult I don't think he should do, whether you are a bully or not. I don't think we should keep enabling those behaviors. So I think there should be some way to put a stop to it, and if that's with my vote, then it's with my vote. But after all this, after all the information from this past year, RFK, his partnership with RFK and even Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard, I'm not as afraid of a second term like I was the first time. Now this also makes me, I want everyone to understand how emotional we make our decisions. If you were to read a transcript of these two people talking, like you didn't know it was Joe Rogan and you didn't know it was Donald Trump, how would you take that transcript? Would you hate Donald Trump's answers? And would you be upset about the things he says, or is it just our emotional side because we know it's Trump and we know the things he is saying, and we're just already so inclined to be against it? So, like I mentioned at the beginning, the tip on how to start decoding politics is pretty much this, and it's to stop just reading the headlines. Listen to the full podcast, listen to the full interview, make your own decision. I was just scrolling through today as to how many times we are told what to think versus letting us jump to that conclusion. And it's just the internet culture. We need the clickbait title to get us, like so and so destroys Donald Trump. And now, being on both sides of it, I've voted Democrat, I've voted Republican, and my YouTube feed's gone from Biden stuff and anti-COVID stuff and anti-Trump stuff, and now more with RFK is more pro-Trump stuff. And so I start watching it and seeing it and being on both sides, and I can see I get both headlines like, oh, Trump is destroyed with this one comment, and also the same thing for Harris is destroyed with this, and vice versa now, or like this just won Kamala Harris the election and this just won Trump the election. And it's like, you're already telling me what to think before I even see the video. And or it just becomes that digging your heels in more. If you already know which one you're going to vote for, if you're a Trump supporter, like Trump gets destroyed with this one comment, you watch it, and it's just making you dig your heels more on Trump. Like, this was so taken out of context that I'm gonna like Trump even more. And same thing for Harris. This was taken so out of context that I'm gonna be Democrat even more. It's just so it's starting to get so ridiculous. And our whole channel is based on things that we didn't learn in school, and sometimes I think critical thinking was kind of taught. I do remember hearing the words in school, but I don't feel like it's ever in ways that is useful as a kid. Maybe they try to make you do things in more academic way, but it's not in a in a practical way, even for a kid. So it should maybe make you find some sort of critical thinking on how to do your homework faster or something like that, or why the benefits of doing your homework faster would have different benefits somewhere else. I don't know, but something that would benefit the kid instead of just teaching it academically. So listening to full interviews will help you get a clearer picture. And so try to already have some, after you listen to a full interview, listen or think about it. What parts did you agree with the person? What parts did you disagree? And then maybe you can start branching out as to what the media thought. And then it's okay to think like okay, they have a point here. That's something I hadn't thought of. But at least you got to get your say in first before you were influenced. And again, I see how the media has lots at stake for this, especially if the media is owned by, like, if they have a lot of money and stuff at stake because of these politicians, I understand why they're going to try to influence it one way or the other. But I think we can be smarter than that and make up our own decisions before they tell us what to think. And like I said, I've been on both sides of it, both sides of religion, both sides of politics, as a teacher, as a parent, as a child, and as a parent. And context matters. So get more context onto all these things. Don't just go by the short thing. It's the easy thing to do. But as my wife says, do the hard thing. Go and learn a little more, figure out a little more as to what this means, and then start piecing your own puzzle together. All right. Well, those were my thoughts on the Trump on Joe Rogan podcast. Subscribe to our channel for more things that you didn't learn in school and learning through people's lifestyles and experiences. All right.